This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
This is Jonathan Kim, and we're on Popping the Bubble.
Hey, Jonathan. It's great to have you here on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we just met at this conference, which was the AI and Showbiz conference here in Los Angeles. And we also have some friends in common from the tech world up in Northern California. Mm-hmm. But you have a very, very impressive background. You've been a founder, you've been an investor, you've headed up European divisions of Qualcomm and been a master of mobile. Maybe if you could just tell me a little bit about your background and
Sure.
how you got to where you are.
Okay. Well, most recently, I spent a couple of years with JPL. And then before that, I was...
And JPL is?
It's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, working with lots of their AI technologies and implementing that in the commercial world. And before that, I was with Samsung. I ran all their content and service business for the US and part of the world as well. And before that, I was with a venture capital firm called Crosslink Capital. I spent some time there. And then if I could add one more, I was with a company called Qualcomm, where right after business school, I ended up running the European division.
Very, very impressive. So what would you say is the common theme throughout your experience and your background?
Let me see. Travel and not spending much time at home. Probably that's the common theme all the way across. But in seriousness, probably mobile technology has been the common theme. And now what I'm really looking at is AI and how that intersects within the mobile and media industry as well. So it's really mobile.
Mm-hmm. And perfect location for it here in Los Angeles.
Exactly.
So you are also doing some really interesting stuff now with Icon. Tell us about that.
Sure. So while I was working with JPL, I really wanted to see how we could apply AI in education, and especially in a very early learning environment. And the idea is really simple. We're living in a pretty interesting times.
Yes.
Where things are changing pretty fast in a network society. I mean, you really don't know exactly what to expect down the road. And yet I found that we're teaching our kids pretty much the same thing. Mm-hmm. That hasn't changed much. Yes, we're exploring many different ways of teaching kids and what to teach. But at the end of the day, in 15 years, when they're ready to kind of face the world, so to speak, we just want to make sure that they have the capabilities or the knowledge to prepare for that. So which means that from age groups anywhere from 2 to 8 years old, it doesn't matter if you're in India, you're in Korea, or even Beverly Hills. We want to make sure that when they're ready to approach the school system and whichever where they're going to be, that they have the right tools to really be successful in what they do.
Right. You talk about living in a post-AI world. So what does that mean exactly to you?
Well, I think the kids that we're trying to help, and indirectly and directly, we're also helping parents. Mm-hmm. It's really, the kids are growing up with AI already. They're surrounded by AI. And a lot of the parents these days obviously know what they are. But in terms of the fact that kids are so used to growing up with a lot of their features that are on the phones and tablets and TV and everywhere, where AI technology is enabling them, that's just reality. Mm-hmm. And how that's going to evolve down the road, it's going to be radically different down the road. So we're kind of addressing from two perspectives. What are we teaching them? That's one. And the other one is how to teach them. That's another very important point. And then also from parents' perspective, we want to make sure that AI is not scary for parents. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that some of the technology that we're deploying is really there to help the parents. Mm-hmm. So that they could help the kids as well. So just be a little bit more specific. The kids, the way they interact with tablet and the phone these days is mostly about watching videos and playing games.
Right.
From parents' perspective, that's usually not good, but they do it anyway because it's a great way to distract the kids. So our thesis is that, well, even if it's 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, if we could show and teach the kids there's something productive, i.e. teaching them about curiosity. Mm-hmm. And when I say teach them on curiosity, it's not really teaching, but we want to make sure that their level of curiosity remains really high and it doesn't drop. And then meanwhile, we also want to teach our parents that they should be curious about what the kids are learning and what they're seeing. So therefore, you have a great cooperation between the kids and the parents on how they leverage some of the content as well as technology on the tablet and the phone so they could learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because I have young nieces that are of preschool age, and I find the topic of AI so fascinating. It's been a recurring theme on a lot of our podcasts, but because, automation and AI are going to kill so many jobs, right? The job infrastructure is going to be completely different for my nieces when they get into the working world than it is for us. And I used to think that really the key to success would be creativity. And now that I'm seeing some of the things that we saw yesterday with AIs making music and movies, I start to wonder. So what do you think are some of the skill sets that are going to be really important and required for the younger demographic as they grow?
I think if you look at all the existing journals and everything else that's out there, you talk about two things, kind of the left side and the right side of the brain, right? We all talk about some of the STEM or STEAM topics that kids should learn. And I think that's true. I think they should learn all the science and mathematics and everything that's out there. And then we also talk about that think kids should be creative because that's what's required in the future. But you're right. I mean, AI is becoming more creative every day. So I think in a way, I think creativity is important, but I do think there are two, if I have to choose two qualities that are incredibly important, I think, is that kids should love to learn. So what that means is whatever they are, whatever they face, whatever they see, they should just want to learn about it. And in order to do that, I think curiosity is what really drives them to do so. So that's why I meant by making sure that curiosity is there. The other part that I really, really believe that kids should learn very early is being resilient and not giving up and always being, and that also is driven by curiosity. So from our perspective, if we could just really nail that one, right? Either using games, either using some of the characters that we are creating, that's much like Siri for kids. The idea there is make sure that kids really, really remain curious all the time. And then kind of information that the virtual agents could provide is your standard kind of search queries, information, and so on. So in fact, it could really play a role of kids' best friend to a degree, a virtual friend. It could be an online tutor, or it could be just a friend, so to speak.
Right.
However, definitely we're mindful that we don't want to replace other children. We don't want to replace parents. We don't want to replace teachers. But it's a place that we think that we could really, really develop so that kids could go there to feel good about themselves.
Yeah. And that leads me to think about some of the skill sets. And, I've talked to people in tech education, and one of the things that is happening, I think, to, maybe this middle generation that hasn't had a chance to get adapted to the new technologies is that they are not quite getting educated on or getting the social norms that we all grew up with in terms of interacting with each other.
That's so true. I mean, I think a lot of the parents, and I know for a fact, a lot of daycare centers, especially a lot of people who work there, they really don't know how to teach a child using a tablet or anything. And these are great tools to teach, but I don't think they really know how to teach those things. Either something like Minecraft is something totally foreign to them, or even how to engage kids using tools like tablets and so on, or phones for that matter. I think that's totally missing. So therefore, your immediate reaction is like, oh my gosh, the screen time is just not good. I think some screen time is good, but lots of screen time or passive learning is not good. So as long as the kids are engaged to it and they could interact and they could learn and they could do other things other than just watching the smartphone, I think it's something that we should have.
And is your product in market now?
No, we have a first version coming out in March. We have a proof of concept. We have the first version that we're iterating every day. I think we're going to start obviously with very, very simple, a way for this character to interact. It's not, we looked at many different ways how we could interact with the child. Certainly, there are many robots out in the market for kids. I don't think that's where we want to go at this point, but we certainly see a lot of kids interacting with Siri. We see a lot of kids interacting with Alexa and so on. So the question is, how do you improve that for kids?
Right.
And so they could actually talk to them instead of yelling at them all the time.
Yeah, make it be a friend. And I think that's something I'm looking forward to as well, having my AI coach.
Right.
That's very, very interesting. Tell me a little bit about what inspires you and what inspired you to make this. Yeah.
So I spent most of my adult life working with big corporations, obviously. And at JPL, I worked a lot with oil companies, financial companies, and so on. So I think I have a pretty good understanding of AI, not in terms of technology, obviously, but in terms of how it could be applied in real world. And I think I saw the potential of AI on how it could help kids and parents as well, in terms of helping them prepare for this future that they're going to be living in.
Right.
So let me give you an example. Smartphone is going to be everywhere. Every single parent in this world probably soon will have smartphones. If I could convert that smartphone into a learning platform for kids and where it's productive and the kids would be able to use that, I think it would be incredibly beneficial if these phones are in the hands of a single very busy mother working somewhere, I don't know, in Singapore somewhere, and they could use that to help their child learn. I think that would be really important.
Right. And it's kind of like replacing its current function, which I think acts sort of more like a babysitter.
Right. Exactly. I've seen that way too much. And then the other thing is, I ran into a child the other day. She was only 4.5, going on 5. I couldn't believe what she was doing on Minecraft. It just blew me away how good she was and how she was learning so much. But at the same time, what was solely missing there is parents' involvement. The parents just didn't understand what Minecraft was, so they couldn't do anything about it other than letting their kids just do whatever she wanted. I think it would be so amazing if the parent could actually get involved in the process and they could do it together. So I think that's one of the things that we're building into the product as well, for the parents really get involved.
That's great. That's adding new ways to interact with your child and interact with them in a modern way that is going to be ubiquitous.
Helpful.
Yes. That's amazing. And so tell me a little bit about the resilience component, because I find that really interesting, because it does seem that is something that is lacking in some of the younger generations, just in terms of putting in the hours, putting in the work to get to a final achievement or accomplishment.
There are a few components of AI that we're putting in. Obviously, most of the AI technologies that we talk about or we see, it's not ready for this kind of application for obvious reasons. But there's certain like machine learning and deep learning aspects of it that we could definitely use. So one of the things, a lot of the onboarding and learning that what we would do with kids is we could catch a lot of the things that kids may have in the beginning, all the way from attention disorder to pretty much anything that we could catch. So from that perspective, we could give parents a view of their child from that perspective, but also about their learning patterns, about how they learn, what do they like to learn, and so on. So we could really, really learn a lot about child with the caution that we have to be careful about privacy and the respect all the laws that exist in the marketplace. So that's really important. In terms of the actual product, resilient is one way we're kind of attacking this is if you could imagine playing a game that's out there, that's your favorite game that's out there. Instead of playing that game in about a 6-month period where you get to the end, imagine doing this over 7 years or 6 years.
Wow.
That's what we're kind of envisioning down the road. So which means kind of the characters you would interact would change, obviously. The kids would know where to go so that your all the trigger points are in terms of making the change and so on. So from that process, I think we're building in this resiliency to kids. So our challenge here is that unlike toys where the kids play with it for a few hours and throw them away, we want this to last for years and years with the child.
Yeah. Well, when you're thinking that long term, you're also building longevity into your product itself.
Right. You're absolutely right. So if you look at even us, look at the products we use over and over again. It's pretty much search engine. And maybe Amazon to buy things and so on. And maybe, and everything else is really search. If you really think about search and buy, that's it. So from our perspective, it's the way we want to do this is search and learn. I think those two aspects are the ones that we should really, really focus on.
And I think what's so exciting about what you're doing is that personalization aspect of it, that you can really tailor education to the child's own learning patterns. That's really cool.
We watch a lot of kids, how they do search, for example, how they use Siri, how they use Alexa, how they use even Google for that matter. And there are certain patterns that we recognize right away. One is a lot of little kids obviously don't know what to ask for. So they learn from that process. But, from anywhere kids are curious about facts, there are many, many places that we could draw that kind of data from. So we're doing that. And then the other thing is, like you said, it's really personalization, right? So I think down the road, if we do this right, if the kid turns, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe they would prefer to use this than go to Google down the road, and then let the child really, really let this grow with him or her and to become kind of de facto search engine.
Right. So what do you think the future classroom looks like?
So we purposely are targeting parents. So that means I think what happens in the classroom is something that, all the teachers and educators, obviously, they're all still trying to figure out what's the most optimal approach. I think for us, we want to really focus on what happens at home with parents and so on. But in terms of classrooms, I think, unfortunately, depending on what country you're in, what region you're in, what district you're in, I think it's all different.
Right.
I think, you have schools where all the kids are totally have iPads and so on. And then you have schools where they don't have even Wi-Fi connection. So I think that the kind of disparate situation that exists where the kids go into a school environment is so vast and so disconnected. So it kind of goes back to our philosophy of, if a parent has a smartphone, we want to make sure they learn everything that we need to teach them.
Right. And so, so it'll be all available via smartphone. Is there any other devices that you imagine?
No, just smartphone. Right now, it's basically smartphone, obviously tablets. And then hopefully we could work with people like Alexa and obviously Amazon and so on. And we could get on all their voice, like Alexa. Hopefully we could work with Apple to get on Siri. Hopefully we could work with Google to get on Google Now and so on. And Cortana, of course.
Yeah, and then you're going to have to build some very special voice recognition software that will understand the child.
So it's, and that's really technically, it's really interesting. That's a really good question. So in terms of how to understand the child, so you get basically speech to text, that's something that is where that we hopefully could add tremendous value. So what that means is we're not Google, so we don't need a whole bunch of training set to teach our bot to understand a child. So there's the onboarding things that we do to make sure that we can optimize understanding. And then so that we could utilize what the child knows, what the parents know, what the parents want them to know, and on and on and on. So it's hopefully it'll just become a very, very personalized and experience for the child. Yeah. And fun.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really noble endeavor because you're educating the future generation and they're going to be so crazy smart.
Hope so.
Yeah, we need them, right?
They'll replace me. So that's good.
Well, let's switch gears for a little bit. I mean, beyond AI, what do you think is exciting that's happening in technology today?
So I think material science is just mind-boggling what's happening there. Obviously, so when I say material science, anything that has to do with, all the way from graphene to all the different kind of material, how you make clothes and pretty much everything else. It's a really, really, really fascinating how that's moving very fast. And obviously, we talk about physics and what's happening there, but the other area is obviously bioscience. That's crazy too. So I think in next few years, and not just mobile and AI, but in those two areas, material science and bioengineering is where it's going to just, crazy things will happen, I think.
Any predictions?
I'll be in Mars in 20 years. How's that?
Mars in 20 years. Elon Musk is going to make it happen.
I think he will.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
I'm pretty sure.
That's very exciting. So from the show just a couple days ago, was there anything that you saw there that you found particularly interesting?
Yeah. There's one Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of missed it. This is really something I learned just watching one of the videos that just blew me away. There was a company that does computer graphics. I forgot the name of the company, but they showed a film about one of the Indian movies.
I think it was Synthesize.
Is it Synthesize? That's it. So they actually had to develop this scene using computer graphics, which is really lots of algorithms. Because in order to have a scene where little cubes become human beings. And what they did in order to make those cubes to act like the way it is, they use AI, deep learning and learning and machine, and to actually have those cubes do self-formate and they kind of become a character, right? But so they had to actually do that. They had to code for each of these cubes, have a set of instructions to do what it needs to do. Well, that's like drones. It's like pretty much anything, drones, pretty much anything that's autonomous, that's anything. These guys in Hollywood kind of did it already. That's what they were doing. So in order to make this film, they actually did something that I think a lot of people are still struggling with. That just kind of blew me away.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing too.
So that was really, really incredible.
And then you were also on a panel. So can you tell me a little bit about what the panel was?
It was really about how to apply AI, right? So the gentleman who sponsored, he's from Intel Ventures, as you know.
Right.
And one of the things that he really, really was interested in how is AI being used. And obviously he wanted to focus on show business and so on. But at the end of the day, the AI is being used so frequently across the board, but there are only a subset of AIs that's being used. Everything else is still in labs or trials or military or in space right now.
So we're still in infancy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, one of the common themes obviously is the dangers of AI, right? We hear all about that. And one of the things that I thought was great about the event is that it was really a very positive note. So can you talk a little bit about how your company is going to address that?
So the two ways, I'm not the best person to speak about this. From my experience, however, yes, we may get to the singularity point down the road where robots and AI will think for itself and this whole idea of where robots would be and also AI would be harmful to human beings.
It could be.
What I'm more worried about human error and human intention, because we have enough technology that exists right now where human, I think, could make really, really bad mistakes or very bad person would decide to use AI against rest of us. I think I'm more scared about that more than anything else right now in terms of AI. So giving an example in terms of mistakes, we all talk about how in deep learning, especially in deep learning, you write a bunch of codes and algos, and when they start replicating itself, writing their own codes, we have no idea what they've written or they are writing. And no one keeps track of it. It's a big black box. We talk about that often. And yet there's no real credible solution to address that. So the only way to address that is at the programmer's level for them to really have their quote unquote AI ethics to know what to do, what not to do, and so on. And I think that is just scary because right now, every day algorithms are created, codes are written that a lot of people don't understand.
Right.
And that are being, kind of pushed out in the marketplace. So I think that's kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And you see that because I read, I think just today or yesterday, that the European Union actually passed laws for AI saying that there needed to be an automatic kill switch.
Yeah. Which I don't know about that one. One thing is we have to accept the fact that in most technologies, especially AI, regulations really cannot catch up on time. I think they will eventually, and there'll be some smart people who could do that. But right now, I just don't see that happening.
So we have to trust in humans then.
Yes.
In the goodness and the good intentions.
And that's why you have OpenAI and a whole bunch of organizations who's trying to address that. But I do think, when you're in an environment where everyone is competing for that best technology, the wow factor, in order to make money, whatever that is, I think we could be really irresponsible. So I think that's something that we have to kind of self-police and self-govern in terms of what we do. And that's a big hope, right? That's a big if and big hope. but I feel like we have no choice but to do that.
Right. Yeah. Maybe going back to, I think, skill set, I think, because I find this topic really fascinating, and even with my own generation and younger generation, what do you think are the skill sets that perhaps we should be fostering ourselves in order to not get automated out of our jobs?
Well, let me give you an example, maybe real world example. In China right now, Foxconn, who's manufacturing our iPhones, they just announced that they're going to lay off about 1 million people of their workers.
1 million?
1 million. I think they laid off about 300, 400,000 people about a year or two ago. Now they said they're going to do about 1 million. So imagine 1 million people getting laid off. Imagine those people, what are they going to be doing next, and so on, and educating them and so on. I think that's a really, really, really difficult thing to do. In China, I think the government's really involved, actively involved, for obvious reasons, right? They cannot have 1 million people out of their jobs, and that's create a huge social uprising, and I don't think they could tolerate that, or they will let that happen. So they're very actively involved. I think in the US, I think that's really slow, right? So we talk about losing jobs. We talk about, okay, we're going to hire 3,500 jobs, but no one really talks about what that is. So I think it literally means if you get down to ground level, you're going to have a 50-year-old guy who's been working with machines all day. If he's going to be really, really productive, he's going to have to go back to school and learn not just coding, but other skills. But I think that process is really, really difficult. It's like making that happen.
Right.
And there are rare cases that works, but I think most cases it's just a very difficult thing to do.
So we need to get Icon to develop some software for the old folks.
Actually, it's funny. We've had requests, and I think there's going to be a huge demand where a lot of the unskilled workers need to be trained.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're talking, anywhere. So there's a huge demand right now in a construction world where they're using a lot of unskilled workers, and they need to get them to kind of level up. So I know there's a lot of push to educate those people and so on. But I think in terms of, people like us, for example, I think it just comes down to two things. I mean, we have to really be resilient, and we have to constantly learn, constantly be curious. Kind of same thing that we're trying to teach our kids.
Yeah, take those lessons, apply them to ourselves.
Yeah.
Speaking of lessons, are there any lessons that in your career and experience as an entrepreneur that you would impart on other entrepreneurs or startup founders?
Well, I, for one, started doing my own company. Just my first time that I started was back in right after .com bubble, where I went out and acquired a company. And we acquired a company. We prepared the company for launch for about a year. And that day was 9/11.
Oh my God.
Yeah, literally.
Did you actually launch? Had you launched before?
No. We prepared the company for a year, and we had a whole bunch of press conference. Everything was set up at CTIA in San Diego at that time. And literally that day was 9/11. So I think someone was trying to tell me that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So I went back to corporate world for many years, and then I decided to jump back on, so to speak. So I started investing in some small companies, and then this company Icon is really decided to just kind of jump right in and run my own thing. So any advice?
Yes.
Is really, I wish that I would have jumped back in earlier. I think that's a real thing. I think if you have the passion, if you have to do it, I think you should just go for it. I wish I could have done earlier.
Yeah. What is it that drives you?
There are many things, obviously, but if there's one thing that really drives me, I know it sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. It's a sense of fairness. If I see there's something that's not fair, I think that's something that really drives me. So just going back to Icon, the gap that exists from the kids who are going to grow up in a world that we're all going to face together. And if we could give them just a little bit of an edge so they could get to where they need to go, I think that's something like that really drives me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And you're definitely, like I said before, really impacting the younger generation to be their best. And
yeah, I hope so.
yeah, and that's a great contribution to.
And I don't even have any kids.
Oh, I thought you did.
Nope.
No. Oh, wow. Nieces, nephews?
Many nieces and nephews. But I think in a way that's kind of funny because I give such an objective view on that without being so beholden to being a parent. I know that's not bad. I'm just saying it's so much different. I have a different view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have the emotional pull necessarily.
And then I could say, no, you shouldn't let them watch TV too much.
Or, yeah, the bias.
Right.
Yeah. So we're looking out for Icon to launch in March. Anything else that we should be on the lookout for?
No. I think it's the one thing is really, as we prepare this product to go out in the marketplace, clearly the parents have to get involved. And in fact, our product will be geared toward parents. It's really for parents. It's not, and the kids obviously will benefit from that. So I think, right now you cannot just dismiss technology or even tablets for them or phone as something that's bad. I think kids will be drawn to that. You can't stop it.
No.
So you have to make sure that they could be managed properly. And I think that's one thing that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have kids either, but I can't wait for this to be out, and I'll be handing it to my brother,
to the nieces and nephews,
and getting them involved because, I think that the interactivity between parent and child is so important.
I agree.
It's so great that you're creating something that's going to be nurturing that. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss that we didn't cover?
Other than thank you for your time.
No,
this is great.
Yeah, no, it's actually been a fascinating conversation. Good. And really looking forward to seeing the launch of Icon. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.